Good morning. It's 8:45 a.m. on April 6, 2021. The two readings that are posting today have some very portentous information, and at the time I read them, I considered them to be a warning, so I comported myself cautiously. I knew at the time that these readings were happening, two factors were ongoing. A, that there had been an announcement that had made some time ago that there had been found to be structural damage at a nuclear power plant in South Carolina. This had not been disclosed to the public in the manner it should have been, and it had not been moved on in manners in which people who had the information thought should have been attended to as a priority. At the same time, there are nuclear power facilities in South Carolina that are in network with a provider of nuclear energy that at some point was merged with a Japanese energy interest, and bankruptcy proceedings had been engaged within the last few years. Secondly, there had been an announcement that there was a reservoir of water outside of Tampa, Florida, that had structural damage, and an emergency situation had been declared regarding what was to be done about the structural damage to the reservoir and how that would impact what was going to occur with the water in the reservoir. The understanding is that, among other things, this water was runoff from an industrial facility, included substantial toxic water that had been allowed to aggregate or accumulate into this reservoir. And thus far, whatever their decision was about remediation or about addressing this toxic water, had not accounted for the need to assure the structural soundness of the facilities within which it was contained before it was remediated. It just so happens that I spent my youth for a short period of time on a military installation in the Tampa Bay area. I remember seasonally there would be a great influx onto the beach of horseshoe crabs. It's a very specific kind of oceanic aquatic creature. And sometimes in great abundance they would come onto the coast. So if you were walking along the beach, you could see them. You could smell them. The ocean has a very specific scent, essence about it during these times. It was right down from a beach, St. Petersburg Beach, we would go to. Different. That water was slightly different. It was on the coast, the Gulf of Mexico. Where I am right now in Dallas is not really so far from the Gulf of Mexico coast. And I've been there within the last few years. Been to the coast, been to the beach. It's different than it was back then. See, here's the thing. There's a military installation on the peninsula outside of Tampa Bay. This is a military facility that has considerable capabilities, some of which attuned to the natural processes of the earth in a way that has not been discussed very forthrightly. Where I come from, and what happened when I grew up, I understand there's a certain expectation that me and the people with whom I grew up have a particular kind of responsibility. And because of that responsibility, there are certain things we are supposed to have and we are supposed to be able to do that not everybody, and as a matter of fact, only a very, very small select group of people should have access to and should be able to do. But one of the things that's reflected in this Benjamin Franklin reading, which makes it so harrowing, is his reflection on the different things that can happen with money, even. The different statuses, and how even if there are fluctuations in terms of the circulation of currency, and overall, if you understand the system and you're willing to take responsibility for your place in the system, it's not untenable. It's not unreasonable. If you have a particular responsibility, something happens. These are the adjustments that need to be made in order for the entirety of the system to be able to be effective, for it to circulate. And when it circulates properly, that reduces the amount of damage that can be caused, and it also increases the likelihood that anything that goes wrong is going to find support through the circulation so that it deconcentrates the impact of a crisis or a stressor at any particular point. But what he doesn't say is what would prevent against a permissibility for an appropriate circulation? Is it being in the wrong role and knowing that you don't belong there and yet coveting something about being there so substantially that you will not accept that you are more appropriately suited for another role or context? Well, I think then we have to get to what is in the Brandeis reading. See, at the time I read it, these things were very profound. And I could not bring myself to read the last line because specifically of the understanding of what had been the setup. And the last line of that section would then have, in sequence, entailed acknowledging the book, the name of the book, the name of the author. There was a specific reason why that was to be put it to the end. But the thing is, the book has passed 99 years. The book has been put into the public realm. The inclination is that something is inappropriately suited. And I think that part of that means that now it is time for me to start reading through the actual opinions of Justice Louis D. Brandeis. I'm going to continue with these readings, but I'm going to honor the spirit that was there at the time. I'm not going to read that last line. It's 8:53 a.m., April 6th, 2021.